Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in! Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Bryce Koon from the Bengal Tiger going to be with us in 30 minutes talking Tigers. Denton Day, Sirius XM, college football overtime with us at 2:30 talking national college football. The Saints lose in a decent effort on Sunday up in Buffalo. We'll talk about the Southeastern Conference and, of course, LSU's loss in Oxford. I've got to be real honest with you. Since LSU came off the field against Florida 2 weeks ago, I've been looking forward to this past weekend with so much anticipation. LSU, huge game on the road against Ole Miss. Ryder Cup, final weekend of Major League Baseball entering the postseason. And it was as bad a weekend as I can remember for me personally in terms of my rooting interests. LSU loses. The U.S. no-shows for 2 days and then can't close one of the greatest comebacks ever yesterday, the Ryder Cup, and the Cubs ace broken rib. So it was a disaster. I hope yours was a little bit better. Probably not, considering the rooting interests of the people down here in South Louisiana. But it's over. And now I guess we got to talk about it. So let's do that with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, LSU loses in Oxford, Mississippi. The final score was 24-19. And I'm kicking myself a little bit here. If y'all listened to me last week, you heard me wrestling with this. And I will be honest. I feel like I'm honest all the time here. I have no pride. I'm wrong all the time. And am happy to discuss that. We'll do that in our SEC picks coming up a little bit later. Picked Arkansas to win. They lost by 100 and fired their coach. I'm wrong all the time. I was not wrong about this game in my gut. I knew that LSU was going to struggle to score points. And I felt like LSU would not be able to silence Ole Miss's offense, even with a backup quarterback. And really all week, I felt like I was going to pick Ole Miss to win the game. And I just kept looking at it and going, Chambliss is not ready for this defense. They're not going to score that much. And LSU's already won on the road. Like they'll find a way to get it done close. And I picked a close game that LSU won. And we got a pretty close game on the scoreboard, not on the stat sheet, but Ole Miss won. And it was because of the same things that have plagued this team and plagued this program for years. LSU does not run the ball effectively and does not run the ball enough. Period. End of discussion. And this has been a problem for 3 years. And you can look at 3 years ago and you can go, well, wait a second. They finished 11th in the country in rushing offense. What are you talking about? They couldn't run the ball. Well, you know where I'm going with that. Jaden Daniels put on a Superman cape. And he was one of the best players in the history of the program. He was the best player in the country by a mile that year. And he camouflaged an offensive line and a program that fails at running the football. You look at the important games that year against good defenses, and you will find that LSU could not run the ball when that time came. They played Florida State in Orlando in a game where they kind of got outclassed. But what you saw was an offense that could not run the ball in that game. You had Josh Williams and you had Caleb Jackson, but you couldn't do anything. In that game, you carried the ball 12 times with your tailbacks, and they ran for 54 yards. 2 months later against Alabama, they ran for 43 yards on 13 carries. In the last game of the season against Texas A&M, where LSU won the game, thanks to Jaden Daniels bringing LSU back throwing touchdowns, the tailbacks ran 15 times for 36 yards. Last year, nobody in the SEC ran it fewer times than LSU. Nobody. And if you look at teams that average less yards per carry than LSU, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, they won 4 games combined in league play. That's the worst teams in the league are the teams that are a little bit worse than you running the football. And you look up at what happened in that game on Saturday night, and you're looking at an Ole Miss team that statistically is putrid stopping the run. Kentucky ran for $175. Arkansas had 5 drives in the first half of their game at Ole Miss. 5 drives. Touchdown, 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 missed field goal. LSU came out of the gate 3 and out, 3 and out. And they don't even attempt to run the ball. They did give the ball to Xavier Thomas a few times, but if you look at the actual scholarship tailbacks, the guys whose school is being paid for to run the football from the backfield and who are also receiving money in NIL for running the ball out of the backfield, you gave the ball to Juwan Johnson once and he fell down and lost a yard. You gave the ball to Harlem Berry 0 times in the first half, and you gave the ball to Juwan Johnson, Caleb Jackson once. And it was 3rd and 20, and he ran for 10 yards. Like, your tailbacks combined for 2 carries in the first half. A fall down loss of 1 and a 3rd and 20, 10-yard run. Everything else is through the air. And you're not very good at that either. But the root of this problem is the running game. And it is atrocious. Now, I know that some people really, really like Pro Football Focus, and know that some people really don't like Pro Football Focus, and I don't really care what your feeling is for it, but I do think that it is a metric you can use to tell the story. It's not everything, but it's part of it. Listen to these run blocking grades from your offensive linemen. Braylon Moore is the best you got run blocking. His grade is a 64.4 for the season. DJ Chester is second best, 58.1. Tyree Adams, your left tackle, run blocking, 56.8. Josh Thompson, right guard, 54.4. Cohen Eccles plays left guard for you, 48.9. Paul Mabenga plays left guard for you, 46.7. And then Weston Davis, who's your right tackle, wasn't out there on Saturday, got hurt pregame, but he's been your right tackle to start. His run blocking grade for the season is 41.5. You don't have a single offensive lineman in this program that can go out and get a Pro Football Focus grade for the season better than 64.4. And 2 of your games are against Louisiana Tech and Southeastern Louisiana. This is not a Saturday night problem for LSU. It was the reason you lost to Ole Miss, because you can't sustain drives, you can't move the ball, your defense is on the field the entire game, and it's because you can't run the ball. That was a problem on Saturday, but this is a problem that is program deep. You had 4 NFL drafted offensive linemen on the team last year, and you couldn't run the ball. You completely overhauled the operation because you didn't have DJ Chester out there for the first half because he was out for targeting. You didn't have any offensive linemen on the field in the first half that were on the field last year for you. Josh Williams is gone. Caden Durham is hurt. So those are your 2 tailbacks from last year. It's not a tailback problem. You've overhauled the entire operation, and it's still the same garbage. So that's the problem. I don't know how healthy Garrett Nussmeier is. We'll talk about it. I don't know what the game plan is entering the game and how the flow of the game changes, but your commitment to running the ball is almost 0, and your effectiveness running the ball is almost 0. And if those 2 things remain, you can't accomplish anything. I'm going to oversimplify this to the point where it's going to sound stupid, but I'm going to oversimplify it. Literally, the point of the game is to move the ball down the field and get into the end zone, right? The easiest way to do that is to hand it off and move forward. Like, to break this thing down to the most simple way you could possibly put it. This is the easiest thing to create success, and you're the worst in the SEC at it. So you can't win. You can beat Clemson. You can go on the road and beat South Carolina last year. You can beat Florida. You can score an impressive win here or there in a given game because your defense is really good. Your quarterback has his moments. You've got real talent on the outside. But you can't win a season trying to do this without a running game. It just can't be done. So something fundamentally in the program has to change. It either has to be that you commit more to the run, that you develop players better so that they can help you run the football. You got to get stronger. You've got to do a number of, it's not just one thing. You got to do a number of different things. And until that changes, you're going to be stuck in neutral. And you're going to be playing on January 1st in some bowl game that changes names every 2 years. That's the destiny of the program. And it's a shame because there are a lot of good things in this program. There are a lot of good things. This defense is good. You've got playmakers. Your quarterback can do some things. Now, we got to talk about him as the show continues because his production has just dropped off a cliff this year. There's a lot good with LSU in the football program. But this virus called the running game that has infected it is bringing the whole thing down. And that, to me, it was everything on Saturday night. Yeah, bad decision by Nussmeier to throw that interception. Yeah, you're not hitting the deep shots on offense. Yeah, I'd like to get penalized a little bit, yes. Yes, there were mistakes made by the coaching staff and Brian Kelly that I will get to as far as burning timeouts in the second half. There are other issues around, but nothing is more impactful than your inability to run the ball. You cannot sustain drives. You cannot convert on 3rd and 4th and short. You cannot convert in the red zone. You're putting too much pressure on your defense. All of these things come from an inability to run the ball. And you look up against the worst statistical run defense in the Southeastern Conference. And for the entirety of the football game, you ran 22 times for 57 yards. It's just, you're never going to win like that, ever. That's our Genesis opening drive here on this Monday. Bryce Koon's been with us in 15 minutes. Come back with us. The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. Love Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. It's on Seagan near Perkins. An awesome place for golfers of all skill levels. They've got 3 indoor bays with that golf simulator, and you can use it however you'd like. If you'd like to work on your game in a controlled environment that's not altered by the weather or whether or not the golf balls are all scuffed up and scraped or whether there's no grass or it's too hot or it gets dark early, none of that happens. It's Swing Easy. You go inside, you can see all your relevant data with your swing speed, ball speed, carry distance, see the spin, all those things, plus a slow motion video of your impact. So if you're looking to work on your game, you can do it at Swing Easy Golf Club, or you just want to have some fun. Drink a couple of beers, drink a glass of wine, hang out with your friends, watch TV, play Pebble Beach on the simulator. You can do that as well. It's a great, great place to hang out on the week or on the weekend. It's the Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. They're online at swingeasygcbr.com. They're also on Seagan at Perkins. That's Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Bryce Koon will be with us coming up here in about 15 minutes. We'll talk some Tigers with Bryce, who covers them for the Bengal Tiger, part of the On3 team. Let's talk about some of the other aspects of this game on Saturday night, not just the running game. The defense, I thought, did a pretty good job. It was not perfect. It was not dominant, but they were handed a terrible, terrible hand by the offense and admirably stood up, I thought, for the majority of the game. You look at the first half, Ole Miss ran 49 plays in the first half. That's bordering a game. You'd like to have your defense on the field for 65 snaps or so. And you almost had 50 in the first half. LSU's offense, by comparison, only ran 24 plays in the first half. Ole Miss, which does not care about time of possession at all, controlled the ball for 18 minutes in the first half. And the defense got tired, and they gave up 2 touchdown drives at the end of the first half when I think they were gassed. I mean, they gave up that 17-play drive to start things. That was the longest drive of the Lane Kiffin era in Oxford. But they did make things tough on Ole Miss's offense for the majority of the game. They gave up those 2 touchdowns late in the first half, and then I thought they got tired late in the game because they had been on the field for the whole game. And if you look at time of possession for the game, it was 32-28. But more importantly, it was the 84 plays that Ole Miss ran to LSU's 56. You ask the defense to be out there for 84 plays and they only give up 24 points. That's a pretty solid day at the office. Yeah, they had some pass interference penalties that weren't great. Yeah, Ole Miss, did move the football, and in terms of yardage, like they did roll up 480 yards. So it wasn't a great day for the defense, but considering the circumstances they were handed, I thought it was a pretty good effort by Blake Baker's group to stand up for the majority of the game. Now, the other aspect of this, we talked offense with the running game. We talked defense there briefly. I did not think LSU's coaching staff did a very good job in the game. And that showed itself to me in 2 instances. The first instance was at the end of the first half. Ole Miss had the ball, and they were driving. And it got to 3rd and 2 from the 14-yard line, under a minute to play. And Lane Kiffin was content to let the clock run a little bit, down under a minute, in case they did not get the 3rd and 2, he could kick a field goal at the end of the half and LSU would not get the ball back. Brian Kelly saw Lane Kiffin doing that and used a timeout with 49 seconds so that if his defense got a stop, he could get the ball back with 30 seconds, 45 seconds to go try to get a field goal. That was a mistake to me. I tweeted it out in the exact moment, and I still feel exactly the same way 2 days later. Because what you did was stop the clock for Ole Miss, who then converted the 3rd down, and now have more time to operate before the half because you helped them by stopping the clock. Now, Ole Miss did have 2 more timeouts, so they could have used one, but Lane Kiffin wasn't using one with 49 seconds left, and LSU gave Ole Miss one. Did you watch LSU's offense? What indication would you have had that LSU is going to be able to go down there in 40 seconds and get a field goal? Nothing for me, and all you did was give Ole Miss, who was on the 14-yard line, a chance to run more plays. If this is a goal-to-go situation, and Ole Miss literally could only run 1 or 2 more plays because then you would have to either turn it over on downs or get points, well, yeah, then you call a timeout. But Ole Miss still had a chance to get a first down and run some more plays. I hated that timeout by LSU, and I believe it likely contributed to Ole Miss scoring a touchdown there with 16 seconds to go. Because after LSU's timeout, they ran the ball. They were short. It was 4th and 1. Ole Miss called timeout. Then Ole Miss went for it, got it, and then ran 2 more plays to score a touchdown. They may not have had time to run 3 more plays if you just let Lane Kiffin run the clock down. I thought that was a huge mistake. Then, in the second half, LSU had to burn 2 timeouts. One, because you had indecision on whether or not you were going to go for a 4th down, and then you ended up false starting. And 2, because you didn't have the right people on the field for a special team snap, and you had to burn a timeout. That is on coaching, and it burned 2 timeouts that you needed to try to stop Ole Miss at the end of the game when they were running their 4-minute offense that ultimately ran the clock out. That's a lack of preparation, lack of execution. I know there were injuries on the offensive line, but you can't burn that timeout. You got to know what you're doing on 4th down. You can't burn that timeout. And I just thought that was a very, very poor job of managing the clock and managing timeouts. And we saw a poor job of managing whether or not to go or kick in the Clemson game before the first half because you didn't pay attention to how much time was left on the clock. And you admitted that mistake. But we've only played 5 games. You're getting to the close to halftime, and you're making these mistakes half the time. I did not like any of that either. So this is not, there was plenty of blame to go around. And somehow, some way, in a game where LSU could not run the ball at all, was completely inefficient throwing the ball down the field, botched the timeout usage, were penalized a truckload, and gave up 480 yards of offense. With all that going on, you were still right there. You were one stop away from getting the ball and having a chance to go down and win the game. And I think that's an indication of all the good that LSU has on this current roster. I think it's an indication of a defense that bent but did not break. Ole Miss, now I realize that there are skewed statistics this early in the season because you play teams that are a lower level and you blow them out and the stats get a little bit out of whack. And so I realize that in saying this, but you realize that Ole Miss entered the game averaging 44 points per game. You held them to 24. They were 20 points under their season average. They hung 40 on Arkansas, and they got after Kentucky offensively, and you held your own there, 20 points under their average. But you didn't do enough elsewhere. And to go on the road into a small yet hostile environment and play a team that is very well coached, that does have a good offense, you have to be a lot cleaner than that. And LSU just wasn't. And I thought there were a number of aspects to this game that were really, really disappointing. Now, the last thing I'll get to here before we talk to Bryce Koon is the quarterback. And this is probably going to be a longer segment on tomorrow's show, but I don't have a great explanation for why a healthy Garrett Nussmeier would be playing at this level. This is a guy who led the SEC in completions last year, who was a top 5 passer all year in terms of production, and who this year is just not connecting with this talented group of wide receivers. Like, I know Barryon Brown is talented. I know Aaron Anderson's talented. I know Chris Hilton is talented. I know Trey'Dez Green is talented. Xavion Thomas, Kyle Parker, Nick Anderson. These guys are talented dudes. And LSU threw for 197 yards on Saturday. 62% completion. You're not able to hit the ball down the field at all with any consistency whatsoever. And so essentially, the only dimension that you have, and I said this on our postgame show on the LSU Sports Radio Network on Saturday, you hear the term one-dimensional all the time. LSU's one-dimensional. They can't run the ball, they're one-dimensional. Well, they only get one dimension of the dimension because in the passing game, which is your only dimension, you don't stretch the field. Well, they tried a little bit. They hit Xavion in the first quarter a little bit down the field, and they threw the ball deep for Barryon Brown a couple times. They drew one pass interference call. But, you're not connecting on those with any sort of regularity. So, really, the only dimension that you have is the short passing game. And that's really easy to defend. And teams do. And that's why you're not scoring touchdowns. 2 touchdowns against Clemson, 1 touchdown against Florida, and then 2 touchdowns against Ole Miss. You get a pick 6 from Deshaun Spears against Florida, but offensively, you're not doing anything. And it doesn't make any sense that Garrett Nussmeier would regress to this point with the same offensive coaching staff around him, with better weapons around him, and an offensive line that is not as good as last year's, but is not giving up a ton of sacks. He's just inaccurate, indecisive, made a bad throw. It is odd. And I want to suggest that he's hurt. But I don't know that. I have no way of knowing that. All we can do is go on what we've been told. And Brian Kelly said on the record that he's fine. And Garrett Nussmeier has said he doesn't want to talk about it. And I told you on Friday, I had a conversation with someone in the building that I feel like would shoot me straight. I asked how Nussmeier was, and the answer I got was much better. I told you on Friday, they said the Louisiana Tech week was the worst week for it. He overdid it in practice and probably should have sat. But since then, he's had 2 weeks to recover, and he's fine. That's what I was told. And all I can do is pass along what I'm told, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense that a guy that was routinely throwing for 340 on Saturdays last year is stuck around 180 now this year. That, to me, is really odd. If you told me that LSU's passing game stunk because the offensive line couldn't block and Garrett Nussmeier was getting sacked more than any quarterback in the SEC, I would go, okay, that makes sense. They lost all those great pass protectors and they're not really protecting the passer. They're doing an okay job protecting the passer. It's not the wide receivers are no good. It's not that it's a brand new offense. I can't figure it out.
There have been drops too.
There have been some drops.
There were drops in the Ole Miss game. There were drops last week against Florida. There's been. I'm not going to say it's just one of the other. One of the other ailments that has been plaguing this offense.
It's rotten. I mean, it's a bad offense right now. I mean, one of the touchdowns you got on Saturday was a tip drill that Nick Anderson caught out of the air. Not exactly how you drew it up in practice on Wednesday. I mean, and this is an Ole Miss defense. It's just not very good. It's just not. They don't have the horses. They got Sage Ryan and Deshaun Womack playing out there. I watched those guys.
Deshaun Womack looked pretty good.
He was offsides, but he got a sack. I don't have great answers for why LSU's passing game is what it is. I got answers for days on the running game. I know why that's bad. It's been bad for 3 years. Passing game, the only thing that I could speak to that makes a lot of sense is that Garrett Nussmeier is significantly compromised. And his mechanics are off, and his practice time is down, and he's just not comfortable enough to throw the ball. That's all I can think of, but I don't know it. I can't speak to that with any certainty at all. So we'll see. Brian Kelly said 2 weeks ago that Garrett Nussmeier, quote unquote, couldn't shut it down until the bye week. Well, bye week's here. Let's see if they shut it down. We'll see. All right, let's talk about it with Bryce Koon when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
On Saturday night, first loss of the season, 24-19 was the final. Bryce Koon covers LSU for the Bengal Tiger, part of the team over there on 3. Joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Bryce, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Hunt. I've been listening to you for the first 30 minutes or so, man. I don't know what you're going to ask me that you haven't said already. So I appreciate you having me on, but let's roll.
Well, let's do it. I mean, I need another perspective. You can't just have me yelling and screaming for 2 hours here. That's not going to help anybody. What is the biggest problem plaguing LSU in terms of the running game? What do you believe the root of that problem is?
You said it earlier, and I echo it. It's a complete lack of development of the offensive line. You know, I work for a company that, we do this for a living, and, worked for a previous company that did this, where we ranked kids out of high school, you rank them on potential, you get the measurables, all this good stuff, and it's exciting things, right? I mean, recruiting's fun. People like to cover it, people like to follow it. But this is one of those things where whatever the reason is, you're getting high 3 stars occasionally, but mostly 4 stars and some 5 stars guys in here, and they're not getting any better. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is we have to realize when you talk about, these recruiting guys, the guys we're recruiting are not playing well. Well, they're very rare you're going to have a guy step on campus and just be him. And maybe, we got a little spoiled, I guess, with Will Campbell and Emory Jones to a certain extent. That's just not the case right now. You don't have, 3 guys on this roster that I feel comfortable putting in the game and saying, hey, can you go put your hand in the dirt and run somebody over? I will say I thought Carius Kern showed some things of that, but I don't think he's a tackle at the next level. I think he needs to be playing guard. So, there's just a complete lack of development, and you enter into kind of the first month of the season now where you've got 5 guys that'll go out there and play, but I don't think you have a combination still that you feel comfortable going out there and saying, hey, these guys can go run the football, because they can't. They just flat out can't. They cannot run block. I know you read off the PFF grades earlier. I like what you said there, too. It's a tool. It's not the Bible. But just overall, I mean, this is an issue with the development. People have asked me about scheme. They couldn't run last year, and they had guys. So I don't know how you scheme up when guys just they can't combo block up at the second level. The communication's out there. I think it just comes down to the lack of development and the players that you have on the roster at this point.
Speaking of players on the roster, in no way am I advocating for or expect 18 to come off the field. He's your starting quarterback. He's a 5th-year senior. He will play. But maybe next year, in moving forward, do they need to have a mobile guy at quarterback?
I mean, if it's going to be this bad, yeah, you have to. I don't know if it's going to be this bad necessarily next year. I don't want to think about next year right now, but there's a lot of work to get there. But I think that's the problem a little bit with what you're running into is, and why Michael Van Buren was a popular name to be thrown around Saturday afternoon, because it's like, well, if Nussmeier can't pass the ball, which is what he is best at, if he can't do that, you know he's not going to run it. And you knew he wasn't going to run it if he was 100%. You definitely know he's not running it if he's truly not 100%. So there's zero threat of a run game with Nussmeier. Teams know that. The zone replay is way too easy for teams to just key in on. They don't have to think about it. And so I think going forward, maybe just in the space of college football, you probably have to have a guy that can do some stuff with his legs. I was my coworker and I, Matthew Bruni, were driving back and we watched that Alabama game. And, the biggest thing I think for Georgia fans, even though they lost that game, they leave saying, look, Carson Beck was good for us last year at times, but Gunnar Stockton's legs make it a little bit more of an issue for defenses and just his ability to pull the ball out. LSU doesn't have that in Garrett Nussmeier. And, if he was throwing the ball, slinging it around for, 275, 300 yards a game, nobody would care. But it's under a microscope now because he's not. And when you don't have that, you have nothing. I mean, this offense has no identity. So I think to a certain extent, when you go in the portal, or whether you look at that roster and say, hey, is Colin Hurley, is Michael Van Buren the guy? Whoever steps under center next year has to have the ability to move around in the pocket, have pocket awareness, and pull the ball down and be confident in his ability to run.
You have a thought on the inefficiency of the passing game?
Well, I wrote about this right afterwards. I think the frustration for myself and obviously you and a lot of LSU fans is that, is he really hurt? Because if he's hurt, it explains a lot, right? I mean, when Brian Kelly came out and said that 2 weeks ago, we all kind of sat back and said, okay, well, that makes sense, fine. And, I think fans are now thinking, was that just a pacifier, that Kelly threw fans just to kind of sit there and, take the heat off of him and his quarterback a little bit? I don't know, but I went through kind of the passing chart and what he did, and PSF does all this stuff where they'll tell you, blitz packages or straight up rushes and stuff like that. And man, the interception he threw, it was timid to me. It's not the gunslinger that we've seen out of him. And I think we know the difference between Nussmeier making mistakes because he's being over aggressive and what we've seen through the first 5 weeks of this season, which is just kind of gun shy, a little bit timid, not comfortable, and it's just not him. And I think that's why everyone's just kind of confused, because if he's hurt, okay. If he's not, then you have a guy who, and this rarely happens, this is why it's so crazy, who has completely lost feel of his mechanics, has completely, the mental side of the game is not there for him right now. And so, I said today on our message board, I said he needs not just a physical reset of his heart, he needs a mental reset. And maybe that's what Kelly was alluding to. I don't know. It straight up comes down to if he's hurt or not, and I don't know if we'll ever get that public, especially after the way that Kelly and Nussmeier answered the question post-game. I don't think they'll ever truly tell us until something's so apparent. But I don't know about you, Hunt. I don't know how more apparent it can get that Garrett Nussmeier is not right.
I mean, that throw he missed to Hilton, he just never misses that. And Hilton had the Ole Miss secondary beat by 3 steps, and he just hung it up there 10 yards short, just like the Barian Brown throw against Louisiana Tech. And then when you get Nussmeier saying post-game, I don't want to answer questions about my health, if he's healthy, you'd be like, no, I'm fine. I just didn't play well. If he's giving you that, I'm not going to answer that. It just feels like there's a lot of smoke there, and there's probably some fire there as well. How'd you feel about the way the defense played?
Yeah, look, I know Brian Kelly talked about, he said this too in the post-game presser, they weren't tired. They weren't fatigued. They had to be. You don't play nearly 50 plays in the first half, and you're feeling great. That's what Ole Miss wants to do. That's what teams want to do. They do all of that in the first half so that when they get into crunch time in the third and fourth quarter, that's where they kind of feel like, hey, we can impose ourselves a little bit. And, of course there were some missed assignments there in the fourth quarter. There were some missed running lanes. They didn't, he was right. They didn't fill the backside B gap. But why? Well, probably because they were dog tired because they're on the field for nearly 100 plays. That's just, you can't expect your defense to do that. And, Hunt, going into the game, I had said, if you keep Ole Miss under 25 points, that was my magic number. I would have felt pretty good about the game. Obviously, they did, but they still didn't win the game because of the offense. But I don't know what you would want this defense to do, really, anything else. That one, and you can correct me, the 170-yard drive where they had, 45 yards worth of penalties, 2 PIs, and then obviously a penalty on West Weeks, that's a backbreaker. I mean, that hurts you, that kills you. The Weeks call was that's brutal. As for the PI calls, once again, my coworker Matthew Bree and I were talking about this on the way home. We were like, that's the one way that LSU is going to be attacked. Is they're saying, yeah, we know Delane's really good. We're going to just try to see what we can do one-on-one. And look, I thought Woodland and Pickett played well. They're young guys. They had to grow up in the moment. They didn't get embarrassed, but that's what happens when you play a premium position like corner. You're going to get flagged at times, especially when they're going at you in man-on-man coverage. And LSU didn't generate enough of a pass rush against Chambliss and this offensive line to help those guys out, and it was kind of a matter of time, I think, for that to happen. So I'm not down on the defense. I wrote about it today. I mean, one thing I think I know coming out of this month is I still think this group can be a top 10, top 5 unit in the country. I hope we don't look back at the end of the year and say that they wasted it or that the numbers weren't what they needed to be because of the offense. That's going to have an asterisk next to it this season. I hope it doesn't, but it might.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of pass rush was concerning because Chambliss threw the ball 39 times and ran some other times on called passes, and LSU did not have a sack in the game. So that there's just not quite as much pass rush as you would have hoped. What's your big picture thought on this team this season now as after they've lost a game?
Yeah, I'm trying not to be too reactionary to it, but it's hard to when your problem is as glaring as it is, and it's offense, it's the run game, but it's the quarterback. I mean, look, we went through into this game thinking, okay, or even in this season, the run game's not going to be top 5 in the SEC. Like, that would have just been a lot to ask for, I guess. But, I think the one thing that is about it is that you could count on, well, you had a guy returning the 3 for 4,000 yards. So you, bare minimum, though, if the defense is much better, maybe the defense being better and Nussmeier returning and all the returning pieces, it would offset maybe your run game. Well, the problem is that the worst case scenario has happened. I mean, you're still 4-1. I get that, but you have trudged along. You beat, a G5 team, an FCS opponent that is what it is. But you beat 2 anemic offenses in Florida and Clemson. That now, after a month's data sample, we can just say your defense really won you the game. The offense did just enough. And then you played a team who had a heartbeat on offense, not just a heartbeat, but a pretty strong one. And that game felt like it was more out of hand than it really was. I mean, I remember looking up at halftime, I was like, I don't even know how LSU's in this game with everything that's happened. I mean, it's really crazy to think that they're only down 2 possessions, then it makes it 17-10, and you're just sitting there kind of like, why? I mean, how are they in this game? So going forward, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry for me. Pretty cut and dry. It is, if you play a team at home, you've got a good chance of winning. Texas A&M makes me nervous, but your other home games I feel comfortable in. Your road slate now features, as we currently speak here, 3 top 20 teams. Vanderbilt, regardless of what happens on Saturday against Alabama, is probably going to be a top 20, 25 team at least when you head up there for a sleepy 11 a.m. kickoff in Nashville. And it sounds crazy. I don't know. Like, I don't know how you win that game if you don't have an offense. Like, LSU does not have an offensive identity. I don't care what the logo on the side of the helmet is. Vanderbilt can score points. They love to play ball control. And then Alabama and Oklahoma later in the season. Like, I don't know. So how does it change for me big picture? It's a long way of saying this team can still figure it out. I just don't know how you fix the issues that you have in season. That's my big problem. Is a lot of these things you could have gone out and gotten a right tackle in the transfer portal. You didn't. You thought Weston Davis was going to be your guy, and that's gone horribly wrong. This offensive line isn't very good, so you can't. There's no free agency. You really can't do that. So I don't know how you fix this in season. I think that you could sneak into the playoffs still, but 8-4, 9-3, it feels daunting to say that, but we'll see what happens. But I just don't have a lot of confidence you can go on the road and beat somebody who can play offense. Yeah,
those 3 quarterbacks are going to go on the road and play are playing really good football at this point. So we'll see. LSU's got a bye week to think about it before South Carolina comes to town next week. Want to read about the Tigers? You can do it over at the Bengal Tiger, part of the On3 Network. Shay Dixon, Matthew Bruni, and Bryce Koon, the crew. Bryce, gives us a little time here on this Monday. We appreciate it, man.
One more thing, Hunt, I wanted to
Yes, sir.
say, and sorry for taking time, but I don't know if people saw this, but obviously just thoughts and prayers go out to Wilson Alexander and his family with what happened. His wife, Alice, passed on this past weekend of cancer. So just wanted to echo, I know all of us in the media, we love Wilson, and just terrible, terrible news that, just makes everything that happened this weekend not so important. So just thoughts and prayers out to that family, and I know the LSU community will surround themselves with them. So, yeah, appreciate it as always, hon.
Yeah, very well said, Bryce. Thank you. It's Bryce Koon from the Bengal Tiger. For those that you're certainly familiar with Wilson's work, he does incredible stuff with the Advocate, and he's been on this show a number of times. Just unspeakably tragic news for he and his family over the weekend as his wife passed away. She'd been battling cancer for over a year, and it shook me up this morning, quite frankly, when I saw Wilson's tweet, beautifully written obituary that he posted on his Twitter feed. It's posted there. Just really, really sad stuff. Breaks your heart, really does. But our best to Wilson and his family. I'm sure we'll see him soon. Tough time for them right now. So no easy way to transition out of that, obviously. Appreciate Bryce bringing that up. We'll come back and close out this first hour of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety can be a big issue in the bathroom, especially as folks age. If there's someone in your life who is aging and you feel like could see some hazardous situations in the bathroom, do what you can to mitigate against it. You can't remove the risk completely, but you can mitigate against it with non-slip floors, with walk-in tubs, with a shower with a bench in it, put guardrails in to some slippery places. These are things that David Duvall and his team do all the time. And it may not be something that you think about a lot, but now that I bring it up, you might go, oh, that might not be a bad idea. Have the conversation with David. That part's free. It doesn't cost anything to just sit down and say, hey, what can you do? And go over that portion of it. If you decide on a project you'd like to embark on, you're looking for financing, they have it. 0% up to 18 months if you qualify. It's all there at OneBathAndClosets.com. One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Just a bad weekend for sports. LSU loses, Saints lose, Ryder Cup loser, Cubs ace, broken rib, and Malik Nabers tore his ACL. Just when it rains, it pours, they say. Really tough break for Malik. Had such an awesome rookie season last year in New York, and if you missed it on Sunday, went up for a pass down the right sideline, landed on his right leg, and the knee just went. It was a non-contact deal. Immediately went down, grabbed his knee, and was carted off the field. And now the reports are that he did tear his ACL, and he'll be out for the season. Just a huge bummer. That organization's a mess. They've been a mess at quarterback now for a long time since Eli left, and he's been the kind of the bright spot of what they're doing up there. He's off to such a great start in his career, and he'll have to be sidelined for years. And now you look up, and it's like the LSU guys. Joe's out for 3 months with turf toe, whatever it's going to be. Jaden hasn't played in 2 weeks. They got beat yesterday, and Malik goes down as well. It's just the NFL. I feel like even more so than college, the NFL deals with so many injuries. And I realize it's bigger, faster, stronger, that whole deal. But as part of the deal with LouisianaSports.net, Ross has an injury report that he posts every I guess not every day. He posts them on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then in a Sunday. And it just feels like there are so many injuries every single week, not just with the Saints, with everybody. And it just feels like the NFL becomes like a battle of attrition. If you can keep your roster reasonably intact, you've got a chance. And we know the Saints haven't done that worth a flip the last 3 years. They've just been riddled with injuries, especially on the offensive line. And last year, the defense really got hobbled. But just tough for the LSU guys. Guess it comes in threes. You got Malik out for the year. Joe's missing significant time, and Jaden's been out for a little bit. Hopefully, Jaden can come back next week and play. But Malik will have to wait until next fall to get back into game action. So, bummer. Saw that on Twitter. Put a story up on LouisianaSports.net yesterday. Just hate to see that for such a bright young star in the NFL with roots here in Baton Rouge. So, that's it for hour number one. Open the show with 45 minutes straight of LSU talk. You want to check that out? You can wherever you find your sound. Hunt on LSU. Certainly on YouTube as well. We've got a lot to cover in the second hour. It's going to go quickly, I'm sure. SEC picks against the spread, including a coaching change up there in Fayetteville. We'll also chat with our guy Denton Day. Saints recap coming to you in 20 minutes, so don't go anywhere. We'll pause for national headlines and Sports Center, get you caught up on all the goings on there, and then we'll come back with SEC football talk. It's right here on a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every car that is on the lot is online at Genesis of Baton Rouge. It's such a wonderful facility, such an amazing staff there. I tell you this all the time, but it really is true. When you go to Genesis of Baton Rouge, you're going to feel like a guest, not a customer. You're not going to be just ransacked by an aggressive sales team. They're not going to be trying to upsell you or take advantage of you. Those stereotypes exist for a reason, and that does happen in some places. It will never happen to you at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're just going to help you to learn and to get behind the wheel of a Genesis. So the odds are, if you're listening to me right now, you have not been behind the wheel of a Genesis. It's fairly new. Change that. Put it on your list. Whenever you're in the market for a vehicle, just put Genesis on your list. You'll probably be on Airline Highway anyway. Just make that stop at Pico. Go see them. Tell them Hunt Palmer Show sent you in and get behind the wheel of one of their awesome vehicles. It's a luxury brand at a reasonable price. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. You can find them online, genesisofbatonrouge.com.